Okay, now we're going to look at congruency statements, but this time we are going to be using measurements to figure out which parts are congruent using either their length or their angle measure. All right, so I'm going to start again by always starting with my marking. So we're going to start with our side. So this side here, WS, so that's WS is going to correspond to NB. So those are congruent. WT, so we look here, WT is going to correspond to NF. So these two are going to be congruent. And then that means that ST is going to be congruent to BF. And then we're going to do the same thing with our angles. So angle S is congruent to angle B. Angle W is congruent to angle N. And lastly, angle F is congruent to angle T. All right, so once we have those markings down, it's going to make this a lot easier for us to get our answer. So we want to know BN. So this means the length of BN. So we know that BN is congruent to WS. So if that is 9, that means that BN also has to be 9 centimeters. TW. TW has 2 marks, so it is congruent to FN. So that means it has to be 14 centimeters. And so those are congruent. BF. So BF has the same amount of markings as ST. So if ST is 17, then that means that BF is also 17 centimeters. All right. Now we look at the angles. So they are color coded here for you. So W is going to correspond to angle N. And we have that B is going to correspond to angle S. And F is going to correspond to angle T. So here we were able to figure out the measurements based on the parts that were corresponding to one another. All right, so now we're going to take a look at another example similarly. Get all this stuff off the screen. All right, so again, we're going to start by taking our 2 triangles and we want to label them. All right, now there are some markings already on this triangle. And so if you can see here on the first triangle, we see that these 2 lines. So these 2 lines already tell me that these 2 are congruent and that this is going to be an isosceles triangle. So we know that this is a length of 27. All right, so doing those markings, we can do that and we can see that those are going to be congruent to these sides here. And then GJ is going to be congruent to XZ. And then our corresponding angles, okay, we're going to have that angle G, looking at how it is labeled, corresponds to angle X. Then we have angle H is going to correspond to angle Y. And lastly, angle J corresponds to angle Z. All right, so now that we have the information, we can go ahead and fill this out. So GJ is going to be congruent to XZ. Well, we don't know what it's congruent to. We want to know the measure, sorry. So if GJ is congruent to XZ, then that means that GJ has to be 18. All right, XY. So XY is congruent to the legs of the other triangle. And since they are all isosceles, it means that XY is going to be 27. And ZY is also going to be 27 because they are isosceles. All right, and then our corresponding angles, H is corresponding to angle Y. You can see that they're both labeled purple. Angle Z are the red angles, so Z is going to correspond to angle J, and then angle J corresponds back to angle Z. Okay?